knows you from last summer, but maybe you just want to give us a quick update on your focus in the BANR project and your studies. And thank you again for sharing with us about remote sensing in the BANR project.
Okay, can you just tell me see if this is working real quick? Is it still the notes?
It shows the small slides on the side, and then kind of yeah, we can see your notes.
Okay. I'm not sure why it's doing that.
Try maybe from beginning.
Yeah, because it's showing up full screen on my screen, but then you're seeing the presenter mode.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's okay. Well, we should be all right.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have any, disparaging remarks in the notes down there. Remember, these guys are dummies. They don't know what.
Hopefully not.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself.
And Tony, you might try to reverse your screens, the orientation of them in your settings. I'm assuming you have a Mac. It looks like it. I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah, I'll try that here.
I think it's saying your big screen, your primary screen, or something like that, your second screen. Anyway.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see if that worked. Does that help?
No.
No?
Okay, I tried.
Okay. Okay, well that's all right. We'll just go with it. All right, so hi everyone. You already know what I'm going to say as you see my notes there, but so I'm pretty sure I've met everybody, but I'm Tony Vorster, and I'm a PhD student here at Colorado State University, working on the BANR project. And I'm working on task team 1, which is the feedstock supply team. It's been great working with you, with the teachers the last couple summers. And we hope to see some more of you again this summer. Today I'm going to be talking specifically about remote sensing in the BANR project. I realized, I think it was last week or a few weeks ago, Randy Boone gave you some background about remote sensing, and hopefully that's helpful in understanding this presentation today. Please feel free to ask questions. I can't see the chat screen right now. So maybe just unmute yourself and interrupt me. But I'd prefer it's a discussion rather than just me, talking at the screen the whole time. So please jump in. I broke down the presentation into 2 parts. First, I'm going to talk about why we're using remote sensing in BANR, and then I walk through some examples. So let's get started with why we're using remote sensing. So you can see some of your fellow teachers here. So collecting plot data like we did at the RET last summer, you can learn a lot about the forest. However,
your slides are advancing, Tony.
They're not advancing?
We're still on the first slide.
Huh. Okay.
There you go.
Maybe I should just do it in this view.
There I am.
Yep.
Look, it's me.
All right, so right now you can just see my desktop, right?
Well, we see your PowerPoint.
Okay. All right, I'm going to leave it like this rather than going into present mode because I think that's what's messing things up. Now you're advancing, right?
We're on why remote sensing now.
Okay, great. Okay, so collecting plot data like this, as I was saying, has its benefits because you can, you can learn a lot about stand and really get detailed measurements. However, it takes a long time, as you saw this summer, to go out there in the woods and measure trees. Um, and it costs a lot of money to pay people to get out there and all the gear. And you're only looking at one specific place in the forest at one specific point in time. So that's why we use remote sensing, is because as soon as you start looking at these images, you can start to make estimates across entire landscapes. Whereas those plots, where single points in the forest you see on the left, remote sensing allows you to make models or predictions across that whole landscape in front of you. Another really powerful thing about remote sensing is that you can go back in time. We can see what that forest looked like back in the 80s and 90s, and maybe use those patterns that we saw in the past to make some predictions into the future. There are downsides to remote sensing. You don't have those detailed measurements like you do in the plots, and so you can only, the inferences that you can make can only be so powerful. And obviously, there's errors associated with when you start to extrapolate, to measure biomass, for example, across the whole landscape. You get much larger errors than you would just looking at plot data. This continuous spatial coverage that remote sensing allows us is key for the BANR project, and these maps are going to be very important for things such as the logistics, the feedstock availability, the LCA work. So it really ties in with these other task teams. That being able to look back in time is also important for BANR because we can start to.
Just run some errands.
Guys,
And
please.
I believe I know. And go to Walmart, plumber, and
Somebody might be off mute.
Can you mute everyone?
Amanda, you're on. You need to unmute yourself.
So, looking back in time, we can start to tell things about the beetle kill wood, like how long it's been dead, which might be important for its feedstock characteristics, or start looking at patterns of how the mountain beetle outbreak progressed. Okay, so now that we've established why we're using remote sensing on BANR, I'm going to introduce three main sensors that we're going to be talking about today throughout our examples. So on the left there, you see a Landsat satellite, and that's one of the main tools that we use. And then in the middle there, you have NAPE, which stands for the National Agriculture Imagery Program, which is just imagery captured from planes. So you can compare the image under the plane, which is a NAPE image, to the same location with the Landsat image, and you see that the aerial imagery is more detailed. And then on the far right there, you have terrestrial LiDAR, and LiDAR uses laser pulses to measure distances, and you can get very detailed measurements with LiDAR. We're going to first talk about Landsat and NAPE mostly, and then we'll come back to the LiDAR. So Randy talked a little bit last week about how these sensors all have their own attributes. So for example, Landsat has, depends on exactly what sensor you're looking at, but in general, Landsat has 6 bands plus a thermal band, whereas the NAPE imagery is collected in 4 bands. And then you have temporal differences. Landsat collects images twice a month and goes back to the 70s, whereas the NAPE imagery is collected every couple of years and only goes back to, I think, the early 2000s. Landsat imagery is also at a 30 meter by 30 meter pixel size, whereas NAPE, the reason the NAPE image there in the middle looks so nice is because it's 1 meter by 1 meter pixel size. Okay, so here's our first example of how we have used those sensors in BANR. This is a map from our task team at Montana State. Rick Lawrence and John Long did this work, and it's mapping mountain pine beetle mortality. So on the left there, it's showing from in low to high percent dead canopy cover, and these models were developed using all remote sensing, so it doesn't use any field data. They use the NAPE data, which, just to remind you, is that center column there. They use the NAPE data to collect information about mortality in a given location. And then they connected that with the Landsat imagery to extrapolate across the landscape and produce this map. The results from this map are really encouraging because, one, it's very accurate, and it doesn't just show where a mountain pine beetle is and where it is not. It shows the whole range from a forest that was just lightly impacted to all the way up to a severely impacted forest, and that gradient is an important thing to distinguish. All right, the next example is slightly different because this is an example of connecting field data to remote sensing, whereas the last one used all remote sensing. So here, we used plots that we measured at the Colorado State Forest State Park, and then modeled using Landsat imagery biomass across the Colorado State Forest State Park. And these last two examples, how they fit together is shown in this flowchart here. You can focus on this upper right here. These are the last two products I've talked about, the total biomass and the outbreak severity. We're going to be combining those to make maps of beetle-killed biomass. And then hopefully, looking at the outbreak severity maps from different years, we can tell how long that biomass has been dead. And you can see the longer-term goals of this feeding into a broader BANR decision support system. Okay, so now moving on to another example here. You can, and this illustrates the strength of being able to look back in time and how that can be used. So we wanted to map the harvest at the Colorado State Forest State Park since the 80s. So we used this model called Land Trender, and that's what this picture is showing here. And you see that we have images from every year, or even multiple images per year, that we have stacked. And this graph down here shows, the red is one location, the orange is one location, the green is one location. It shows the values from the Landsat images for each year. So you see, year along the x-axis here. And it shows how that pixel changes over time. And based on that pattern of how that specific location changed over time, you can start to make some inferences about what happened at that spot. So for example, this red line, in 1985, it had a huge change, a quick change and a large change. So you can say, okay, that was a clear cut. Or you might see, this green line has a quick change as well, but it's a much smaller change. Same with this, the orange line. And so you can say, okay, that was not as big of a disturbance as the clear cut, that was a thinning. And you can go on the ground and validate and make sure you're inferring the right disturbance. You can also imagine that we're not using Landtrender for this, but you could look at pixel changes over time and say, oh, that looks like beetle kill because it's a minor change, and maybe it takes, maybe it happens over a few years. So here's the results that came out of using that approach at the Colorado State Forest State Park, and it shows harvest from 2010 back to 1987, and this was a project done by a NASA-developed team of interns here at Colorado State University in partnership with BANR. Okay, now looking at the terrestrial LiDAR. Remember, this is the system that uses pulses of lasers, uses thousands and thousands and thousands of these pulses to measure forest in this case, and it gives you very, very precise measurements. So you can see the machine we use, the LiDAR scanner on the upper picture, and then when you take a bunch of these scans and stitch them together, you get a 3D model of the forest like shown down here. And you can see the heart of the image where it's pretty densely white. That's where a plot was, and you can zoom. I don't have this here, but you can zoom in and see each tree almost like you're in a video game. You can look around and see each tree, see the branches. It's pretty cool. And then the reason it looks so much less dense around the edge is because the laser pulses get blocked towards the edge, and so they're not picking up what's actually there on the edge, but it is picking up what we're interested in the middle of the stand there. So that's an example of how you could use LiDAR to look at stands. However, we're more interested in looking at single trees. So you can take detailed scans of single trees like we show here, and start to measure things like the tree's volume. So one thing that we've been working on is, for example, this tree here in the middle, we scanned it with a LiDAR, and then we cut it down with Michelle's help, if she's on here, and we took detailed measurements of this tree's biomass. And then we did that for a bunch of trees to make equations relating the diameter of the tree to the whole tree's biomass. The whole reason we scan the tree is that we hope we can measure volume accurately enough with the LiDAR to where we can just scan other trees to build that diameter to volume relationship rather than having to cut them down and measure them that way. So if we can get that to work, we can sample many more trees much quicker than we would be able to do otherwise. So that really went much much quicker than I was expecting. So we have plenty of time for questions. You can see here RET career from this summer. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Tony, Logan.
Hey, Logan.
Hey, I was just wondering if you're always thinking about. Is it echoing from you guys?
It's not echoing for me.
We're always thinking about looking at data nuggets, and I was wondering about one if there are sample data sets. For example, in that slide you showed, it showed the change over time using, I think it was the Landsat image. You know, maybe students be asked to look at a graph and interpret what had happened.
Yeah, you know, we could certainly do something like that. We're actually going to be working on a project this summer, looking at these image stacks and these pixel changes over time, and identifying exactly what the line looks like for various disturbances. So maybe we could talk this summer and figure out how we could come up with some products that you could use. Are you interested in just the graphs like this, or the imagery, or what are you thinking?
I was just trying to think about, I was looking at this graph, I wasn't sure how far along you guys were at knowing which patterns represented which disturbances, but
yeah, you know, there's this. So this figure is from this Landriner group at Oregon State, and they actually already have they have some published graphs that have pixel changes over time and have assigned what that disturbance was. So we could probably even tap into some of the existing resources for a nugget of that sort.
thanks, Tony.
Tony, can you talk a little bit about some of the products that the BANR folks will be developing using remote sensing, and kind of who the audience is and kind of purposes of those products will be?
Sure. So I'm going to go back to this slide here. Some of the main products, at least from our team, will be these maps of biomass and mountain pine beetle outbreak, and then the resultant mountain or beetle-killed biomass maps. Within BANR, those will be used to look at forest carbon over time, and also the forest logistics. Outside of BANR, I'd say these maps are probably aimed towards people interested in forest carbon. Yeah, and then it'll be packaged into this feedstock supply or this decision support system that will will be geared more towards broader users and industry. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So what's the kind of, do you have a time frame for when?
Yeah, so we're working on the 3 BANR case study regions. We're working on those at different times. So we hope to be wrapping up the Colorado products this fall, and then moving into Idaho. The Montana is getting closer to done. Rick has already done the outbreak severity maps up in Montana, and John Hoagland, who actually is on task team 2, has produced biomass maps in the Helena study area, so we're going to be combining those. So we're still looking into the fall and next spring as to roll out the finalized version of these products.
Thanks, Tony. Are any things available now?
What would you want to use it for? Beth? Beth, you there?
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you now. I was just
Sorry.
wondering.
I was trying to like mute and unmute and I hung up by mistake.
Okay.
My 3-year-old just got home, so it's
Yeah.
a bit of chaos. In terms of use, just kind of general brainstorming about possible, educational uses or access. Nothing
Yes,
particular.
some of these things are available. For example, this outbreak severity map is pretty much wrapped up, and we have to talk to Rick, but I think that would be ready to go. These biomass map, I could give you something, but I'm not very pleased with the product yet, so I'd be hesitant to do that. But as things become available, we'd be happy to share them.
Great, thank you. Other questions for Tony?
If we did want to access any of the outbreak severity maps, how would we do that?
Oh, that's a good question. So are you working with GIS in your classrooms, or is it, because we could either give it to you in in a GIS program, or maps, images, depending on how you wanted to use it.
My guess would be images would be better at this point. I can put GIS on my own computer, and I've used it some, but I don't have much access to get students on that way.
Yeah, we could certainly make some maps to distribute.
I don't know if folks know this, and I don't know if it's true in other states, but in Montana, I know that ArcGIS is available free to all schools. So it might be something that folks are interested in looking into for your classroom.
I think one of the problems we run into is just having enough time to train students to use it, even if you do get it put on school computers. And I'm not sure if that works on Chromebooks or not, which is what I have in my classroom right now.
Right. Yep.
And there's also online versions that are they're, I guess, easier to use and more basic.
So there's ArcGIS Explorer Online, or something like that. It's an internet version that I assume would be usable with Chromebook.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions for Tony? Amanda or Michelle, could you grab Tony's PowerPoint and post it up on Basecamp if that's okay, Tony?
Yeah, I can send that to them.
That'd be great. Or if you want to send it as a PDF, that'd be great too.
Okay.
You can just send it to me, Tony, and I'll take care of it. This is Michelle.
It's Michelle. Okay.
Thank you, Michelle.
Send it to you. All right. Well, thanks everyone. And maybe I can be in touch with Michelle or Amanda and figure out exactly what sort of nuggets you might want to come out of this.
Have you and Michelle worked on a data nugget already?
Yeah, it's still in
Vorster
progress. Yeah, we've got it about 2/3 done. We're following the datanuggets.com format, which is a little more extensive. Amina and I are in progress of working on that. She was gone all last week with soil judging, so we haven't touched it in about a week and a half.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be cool to check out. Thanks for working on that.
But that nugget, at least the data I gave them doesn't incorporate remote sensing.
Yeah.
Did you say it does or
Destructive
doesn't?
sampling does not.
It does not. It's more forestry plot data.
Maybe that'll be the next one. remote
Yeah.
sensing. Okay. Well, thank you, Tony. Thanks, everybody. And hopefully maybe we'll see you this summer, Tony, at our annual meeting in the summer at Fort
Okay,
Collins.
that sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.